$1 million Bitcoin, Samson. When's that gonna happen?
My guess is it's going to be this year.
It's going to be this year. That's a 10x.
Bitcoin has 17x in the past. There is no upper bound to Bitcoin. People talk about diminishing returns, right? But if it's a step change, just like the failure of the German mark, it's not a gradual thing and there's no upper bound. It's just gone.
Are they scared of Bitcoin, Samson?
I think the IMF is definitely scared of Bitcoin because they are a fiat organization. With Bitcoin, they're irrelevant, or they need to adopt Bitcoin. It's their choice. Either you adapt or you die.
Bitcoin is on track to hit $1 million per coin this year, and major financial institutions will have no choice but to embrace it. That's the bold prediction from Samson Moe, CEO of Jan3. This isn't unprecedented. Bitcoin has surged 17x in the past, and when financial systems fail, they don't gradually decline. They collapse instantly. According to Samson Moe, there is no ceiling for Bitcoin's price. When fiat currency crumbles, it happens fast, just like the German mark during hyperinflation. The fear is real. The IMF and global financial elite see the risk. Bitcoin is no longer just another investment asset, it threatens their monetary control. Without control over money, they lose power. They have two choices: adapt or fade away. The biggest move in Bitcoin's history is coming, and being prepared is crucial. Stay tuned until the end of the video as Samson Moe unveils even bigger predictions for the crypto market. Also, if you enjoy listening to crypto-related content, please show your support by liking and subscribing to this channel by following the link in my bio, and get access to my free daily crypto updates and expert predictions direct to your inbox. Each newsletter contains on-chain data, forecasts and expert predictions. All of this is available free of charge. It only takes a moment to sign up and you can always change your mind later. Now back over to Samson Moe.
I believe this pullback is very normal because the altcoin market was overheated. If you look at XRP, Ripple, it was $3. That's ridiculous. With Bitcoin at 97 or so, Ripple is still at 260. And then you have Solana and everything. Everything is overpriced right now for the altcoins. So I think it's normal. We come down, they shake off, and then we go back up. Bitcoin dominance increases again. But Bitcoin dominance is really intellect measurement, like how much money is being allocated to altcoins. And that needs to drop before we can take off again, I believe. But overall, Bitcoin is undervalued. And I think even at 100K, 150, 200, it's still undervalued. Well, there's just so much demand for Bitcoin right now from MicroStrategy, from the ETFs, from nation states, from ordinary people buying and hodling, that I don't think people have fully realized that most of the year's supply of mined Bitcoin is already gone a few times over. So you have to understand there is ultimate scarcity in Bitcoin. And I believe the understanding of ultimate scarcity is very far away still. People just can't wrap their heads around there only being 21 million. And when the price drops, people kind of feel confident that I can get it later. But then Bitcoin rips and then there is no later. Like imagine being able to buy Bitcoin at $10,000 a coin again. It's not possible. And this milestone of 100,000 will be gone again in time. So there's two things I would say. One is there are obviously OGs or old hodlers that are going to sell something and, buy a house, maybe enjoy life a bit. So there will always be some coins that are sold outside of the mined supply. But there's also roughly 2 million coins that sit on exchange for market making, trading, and arbitrage. And those 2 million coins, it's dropping obviously. Now it was at more than 2 million before, but now it's at, around 2 million. But that is enough for the coins to drop the market. And a lot of it has to do with Bitcoin being a 24/7 market as well. So this drop, I believe, is related to the tariff war. American, Canadian, Mexican, we're all going to tariff each other. And it's just panic. So Bitcoin being the only 24/7 liquid market is the only thing that can react immediately. So it sort of like the market sentiment is taken out on Bitcoin. We're the first to move, the most volatile and the biggest move, and then the equities markets and everything else follows after that when the markets open. Such an antiquated concept, right? But that's what it is. But going back to the point, those 2 million coins is enough to move the market a little bit. And the impact of those 2 million coins, I believe, is becoming less and less pronounced as we increase hodlers. So if you break down the schema of who impacts Bitcoin price, you have the hodlers. Zero impact. They're just sitting on the coins. And in ways you can look at it, they're coiling up that spring. Then you have the buyers. the people that are DCAing either like by day or by month, or you can say MicroStrategy is also in the DCA category, and hodling, but they're actively in acquisition mode and Metaplanet, and like you said. Then you have the traders, which is kind of that 2 million coins. So that is kind of what is driving the market. And Bitcoin will always be volatile because you have that slush fund of coins on exchanges. But that is going to be drained over time. And we do see that. And it makes it more pronounced, the coil up effect from the DCAers and the hodlers. I think Trump is the best choice of the current slate of candidates that we have right now. And probably the best option for America moving forward in this period of time. Because he's able to bring together different groups. Like he brought Elon Musk. You know, you might think he's a shitcoiner and whatnot, but he is the richest man in the world and influential and capable. He's able to bring RFK group, the people that are concerned about health and other things, and some activism, environmentalism. So he's able to kind of bridge together different segments of the population that hasn't really been done before in recent times. So I think Trump coin, Melania coin aside, it was the best choice that America could have made. The other choice was Kamala and dark times. More Elizabeth Warren, choke point 3.0, everything bad possibly for Bitcoin and, you know, the crypto industry. But now we see the tariffs, and that's another interesting can of worms. But at least you can see that the tariffs are going to be great for Bitcoin. I think near term, people that are affected by the tariffs, they probably can't see it, or if they're not into Bitcoin, they may not be thinking about this, but it's going to drive a lot of people to look at Bitcoin and protect themselves.
What do you think about Ross being freed?
I think that's the most important thing. So I had a wish list for Trump. I had some predictions and a wish list. I think if he just frees Ross and stops attacking Bitcoin, like stops the attack on Bitcoin hodling, I think that's enough. The strategic Bitcoin reserve, it's good for the government. It doesn't really do much for the people, except for a mass education program for the people. Like, okay, the government has it, now I should have it. But outside of that, it doesn't really do anything for your average person in the US directly. Paying off the debt would be beneficial for US individuals. But
If they used it for that.
yes, if they use it, but you don't know what they will use.
That's a big if.
And you don't know what the composition will be yet either of well, because it's not a strategic Bitcoin reserve now, it's a digital asset reserve, which is broad and diverse and inclusive, but we don't know yet what's going to be in there. And hopefully it'll be just Bitcoin, but there are obviously altcoin projects lobbying to be included, like Ripple. I think President Bukele is a Bitcoiner. Trump is not a Bitcoiner. He spoke at, Nashville conference, but he's not a Bitcoiner. He's done a lot of other crypto-related projects, and I don't think he fully understands Bitcoin, and you can kind of pick that level of understanding out from his speech. If you compare his speech to RFK's speech, it's a world of difference. So he's more crypto, right? And that's probably why the US is not as Bitcoin maximalist as El Salvador is. So we'll see how things go over time. But there are a lot of lobbying groups in the US, obviously, too, exchanges that are trying to push them towards, crypto. And if it diversifies the reserve, that's probably why.
So recently the IMF and El Salvador reached an agreement so that El Salvador would receive a loan. And I think a lot of people are seeking clarity in terms of, is Bitcoin still legal tender in the country?
Yeah, so it's confusing. And I would say the breakdown is this. It's a glass of water. It's kind of at the halfway mark. You can look at it as half full or half empty. So the Bitcoin law has been softened, or you can say neutered a bit. They've amended it to comply with the IMF agreement, almost to the letter. So everything they said in the IMF agreement, they've amended it. But I think the key thing is the amendments leave the door kind of open. It's ambiguous. So there is still a Bitcoin law, but Bitcoin is no longer a currency. And it is legal tender, but it is now voluntary. So what does that mean exactly? It means Bitcoin is legal tender. There's no capital gains tax still.
Okay.
There's another line in there that says you can use Bitcoin. The government can't now. So there is this Bitcoin law. Bitcoin is legal tender. But what is a legal tender without enforcement? Not that there was before. It always has been voluntary. So you can look at it both ways. Like, some people are reacting very strongly and saying, they capitulated, they bent the knee to the IMF, and because they sold us out, and they're very disillusioned. And then you have the promoters of El Salvador and Bukele, and they're saying, yeah, we won. we're going to take the money and buy Bitcoin with IMF money. But I think the truth is somewhere in the middle. There was a compromise. There was adaptation. The law itself is weakened, but Bitcoin still has a standing here in El Salvador. So you take the good with the bad. And I think it makes sense in the long run. Bukele is not the president of Bitcoin. He's the president of El Salvador. I mean, he has to do what he thinks is the right thing for this country. And if he thinks the right thing for the country is to secure the IMF loan, which will lead to other loans, then that's the way they should go. Hyper-Bitcoinization is the point at which we no longer convert Bitcoin into fiat. There's only Bitcoin left. So it's the end state, really. And you could say it's hyperinflation of the dollar, really. Right? When the dollar hyperinflates, then no one's going to want the dollar. They will just want Bitcoin. So yeah, it's the greatest demonetization event in human history. Basically, all fiat will die all at the same time, very rapidly, and everyone just wants Bitcoin and transacts in Bitcoin.
Really? It's just, so you don't see a world where the dollar and Bitcoin can coexist?
I don't see it, but a lot of Bitcoiners do see it. I think Saylor is one of those. Like, if you look at his Bitcoin 24 model, right? He actually tapers off the model after a number of years to kind of slow the death of Bitcoin, slow the death of fiat. So Bitcoin growth tapers off. But I think monetary systems, especially when you're dealing with 100x improvement over the old system, and even over gold, it's not a gradual taper. It's just a flip of the switch. Everyone's just going to switch to this new thing. I don't see that happening in Bitcoin, and we didn't even see that happen with the devaluation of the German mark. It wasn't that it slowly tapered off, and there was one baker in this village over there that was still taking the mark, 5 years later, because that network effect of that money dies. So maybe some people have it in a drawer, but no one's actually going to exchange anything for the mark. I think the IMF is definitely scared of Bitcoin because they are a fiat organization. For those people that don't know, they have their own shitcoin. It's called the
SDR.
Yeah, SDR, Strategic Drawing Rights, which means they can just kind of print their own money out of thin air too. But with Bitcoin, they're irrelevant, or they need to adopt Bitcoin. It's their choice. Either you adapt or you die. But I think there's another darker angle here, which is they're basically a loan shark. Their job is to lend money in perpetuity to countries like El Salvador and developing places around the world. And this kind of puts them out of a job. So I think they had to fight for that, or they wanted to save face, because remember, they made a big stink about all the Bitcoin adoption in El Salvador, that you're gonna fail, it's dangerous and whatnot. And when they're wrong and they're incorrect, and the metrics prove them incorrect, vastly incorrect, I think they need something to save face. So maybe they insisted on these concessions just so they can say, yes, we got something. With the ETFs, there is no bottleneck anymore. Central banks can buy ETFs. So any demand for Bitcoin can now be satiated without any problem whatsoever. And that is really big. That's why actually I thought 2024 was going to be the year we hit 1 million, because I don't think people fully understand how big that is. Central banks can buy ETFs. There is no barrier for fiat money entering Bitcoin. But I think this year we'll hit it, since we missed last year. But you have MicroStrategy, you have ETFs, you have the removal of the barrier, you have nation states, and what else? There's just so much going on, like real adoption of Bitcoin. So I just can't see it not hitting 1 million this year. And the other thing is, you see a lot of people predicting prices, right? They like to be cautious and realistic and say, yeah, it can get to 150. It can get to 200. It can get to 250. Because I think they want to sound reasonable. Nobody wants to be the crazy guy saying it's going to 10x, like me. They want to be, I'm a serious person with realistic projections. But Bitcoin is not a realistic thing. It's a zero-sum game. Either you're going to use Bitcoin or you're going to starve. So it's all or none. And when you get to different levels, like when you get to 100K, when you get to 100K, it's different, right? When you get to 200K, the world again looks very, very different. Just close your eyes and imagine, what does the world look like when Bitcoin is at 500K? that's we're reaching half of gold's market cap at that point, you know. That will demonetize gold if it doesn't get demonetized earlier, because there's talk of you know, the US selling gold to buy Bitcoin to fund their reserves, because that would take out their enemies who have been accumulating gold for the last decade, right? But disregard that. Bitcoin is sitting at 500K. We are the second largest asset now, behind gold. It's a very different landscape.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to access my free daily crypto updates and expert predictions direct to your inbox.